For your presentation, and now pasamos directamente.
And now we go to the roundtable with Diego Rodríguez as the moderator. We'll be talking about the impact of COVID-19 in the energy sector and possible recovery scenarios. He is Professor of Economy of the Universidad Complutense of Madrid. He is a member of the Research and Competency. He works as well at FEDEA. He's been working in research as well as the universities of Cambridge, Woolwich. He's been as well, additionally, a technical supervisor of the Survey and Business Strategy for over 15 years and a co-editor of the Applied Economy magazine. He was member of the board of the National Commission of Markets and Competition in the Regulatory Supervision Committee.
Everyone to this roundtable of the annual event of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council. The aim of this roundtable is to address the challenges faced by the energy sector in the new context of the COVID crisis, and how this crisis can be a catalyst to accelerate the alignment of energy policies, business strategies, and the behaviors of citizens with the fight against climate change. Although we are in times of uncertainty, we know that the expectation that we had some few months ago have changed. I believe that this table is a good opportunity to share different perspectives from the European institutions, businesses, and energy organizations. In that sense, we are very lucky to have today with us four outstanding speakers in this roundtable, and it's my pleasure to introduce them to you. Let me summarize a lot her extensive curricula with fruitful professional careers in all cases. First, Yolanda García, Yolanda is PhD in economics at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. She worked as economic advisor at the Spanish National Regulatory Authority for 8 years. And since 2009, Yolanda is working for the European Commission in the Directorate General for Energy. Currently, she is Deputy Head of Unit on Strategy and Policy Coordination. Second, Birthe Bruhn-Léon is Director of the Iberia Department within the Operation Directorate of the European Investment Bank, the EIB. She started her career in 1992 at Deutsche Bank, International Corporate Infrastructure Finance areas, but joined the EIB in 2003. And in her current position, Birthe is responsible for ESB lending's operation in the public and private sector for Spain and Portugal. Later, María Mendiluce. María is PhD in Energy Economics and CEO of the Women Business Coalition that, as you know, brings together several international organizations committed to accelerate the transition to a zero carbon economy. She was formerly Managing Director at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and held senior position at the Economic Bureau of the Spanish Prime Minister, Iberdrola, and the International Energy Agency, among others. Finally, Martin Young. Martin is Senior Director, Business Insight and Scenarios at the World Energy Council. Previously, Martin served as Director of Policy and Risk, leading the work on the energy trilemma and dynamic risk. He joined the Council in 2017 after spending 5 years at the International Energy Agency, where he led the Emergency Policy Division. So I say I have summarized a lot her extensive curricula. Thank you again, all of you, for being here today. And we have agreed that the structure of the roundtable will be as follows. First, each participant will present some main ideas for a few minutes, 5, 6 minutes at the beginning. Later, I will introduce some questions in order to motivate a dialogue. And finally, we will open the floor to the audience. And I encourage all of you to introduce questions by using this little platform. We have 1 hour in total. We will follow initially the same order than in the program. So, Yolanda, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Diego. Good morning. Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be here today in this very interesting roundtable. So thank you very much for the invitation. I think just to set the context, we know the impact of the COVID-19 on the economy. So it has been a huge economic impact, all global-wide. The EU has been affected, but also in particular countries in the south of Europe, like Spain, France, Italy, Portugal, have been highly affected. The impact of COVID has been also seen in the energy sector. In particular, has been a drop in the energy demand during the confinement. But as well, we have seen in a positive note that renewables have proved more resilient during the COVID-19 crisis. And they have increased the participation in the gross inland energy consumption, but also in the participation in the electricity mix. So this is very positive element due to the drop of the fossil fuel participation, in particular because of travel restriction or because the reduction of the consumption in the industry. This seems a very good starting point to switch to the European Green Deal as a new growth strategy aiming to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. So we see that this unprecedented crisis with an unprecedented response in Europe in order to address this economic crisis. The European Commission proposed in May an enormous recovery package that has been endorsed by the European Council in July, and now is under discussion both the multi-financial framework, but in particular with a new fund that has been created due to the crisis, that is the Next Generation EU, which is around in total 1.8 trillion euro for the next period of 2021-27. In particular, for the Next Generation EU, there is an important envelope, which is called the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is around 672 billion euro, with the clear aim to help member states to put forward investment and reform linked to the green and digital transition. So here is the first time that we see really the political willingness to ensure that part of the money for the recovery is going to be invested in order to transform the economy, to make the economy greener, and to ensure that we reach this 2050 climate neutrality target. So the idea is not to revert to the situation as existed before COVID-19, is to take this opportunity for the green transformation, driving the EU towards this climate neutrality objective. For this reason, at least 30% of the Next Generation EU will go to the green and sustainable projects. In more concrete terms, for this Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is part of the Next Generation EU, 37% of the expense should be allocated in this climate-related investment. This is an important amount of money. In total, for the Recovery and Resilience Facility, will represent around 249 billion for this climate mainstream, which is huge and is a very good opportunity. Why energy is an important component in the Recovery and Resilience Facility? Because we don't have to forget that energy production and consumption represent around 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's important. And because we have in front of us the 2030 climate and energy target. So the preparation of the Recovery and Resilience Facility could be used in order to achieve the 2030 and the 2050 targets that we have in front of us. We need to recall as well that recently the Commission has proposed a more ambitious target for 2030, what is called at least 55% of greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030. Basically, what the Commission has published recently, 17 of September is what is called Climate Target Plan. To ensure to reach 2050, we need to have a more ambitious target for 2030. So instead, the 40% of today, the greenhouse gas emission reduction would be 55% if endorsed by the Council in December. So for this more ambitious target, there is also as well a huge amount of investments to be done in the coming years in the energy sector. In total, the Commission has estimated for the decade 2021-2030 of around 260 billion per year more compared to the previous decade. In addition, if we put on top this more ambitious target, it means that around would be 350 billion per year more than compared to the previous decade. So it's a huge amount of investments in order to reach this ambitious target. So the funds, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, could be seen as a very good instrument to reach these ambitious targets. Second, there is an important component in the green transition, is the possibility to trigger sustainable jobs, growth, and European leadership. And this is very important element. Why? Because it could be investments oriented to energy priority areas. For example, deployment of renewables, including hydrogen, where Europe has a huge potential, but also to all related infrastructure that facilitate the integration of renewables. For example, storage, modernization of the electricity grids, enhanced interconnectivity. Of course, system integration, integrate the sectors. It implies as well an important volume of investments that could be coming or could be partly funded by the European funds. Facilitate the decarbonization of the gas sector is key as well, with the production of biogas, biomethane, biofuels that could be as well pushed for green transition, but also to revert in jobs and growth. Building renovation is an energy priority area where as well has a clear impact in terms of positive impact in terms of local jobs and employment, jobs and growth in Europe. And clean mobility is another area which is an important to help the transformation of the economy and to put money in these areas. Just to give you an idea, IRENA has recently published a report where it estimates that each €1 invested in renewables or energy flexibility will create at least 25 jobs. In the case of the €8 million invested in efficiency will create about 10 jobs. This is just to give an idea the employment creation of these climate neutrality investments. Clean technologies are also important in terms of promote the European leadership and makes Europe more resilient. And here we have a huge potential because the European industry holds a strong global position in some of key technologies. For example, offshore, solar, storage, hydrogen. And these technologies will have major scaling up potential over the coming years. We need to take advantage of this. If we go to more concrete action, we'll go to the step of recovery and resilience plans. So in Europe, the Recovery and Resilience Facility is going to facilitate the recovery of the member states, and it's going to do it in order to member states, they need to prepare plans where they have to identify the reforms and investments to address the existing challenge. So important is like the recovery and resilience plans should be submitted to the Commission. There is the possibility to submit the draft plans by since 15 October, and the final plans are due to April 2021. So now member states are in the process of preparing the draft plans in order to incorporate all the elements, reforms and investments that could be front-loaded in the next years. Because an important element is the time frame. Because the aim of the instrument is to recover the economy, all the investments, all the reforms should have a very short time frame, is up to 2023. But the disbursement of the investment could be done until 2026. So keep in mind projects that could be immediately front-loaded and help the economy to recover. Once the Commission will receive the plans, the Commission will have 2 months to assess the plans, and when the plans would be assessed, the countries will receive immediately the financial contribution. So maybe just to give a short indication that the Commission has already published guidance to facilitate the preparation of the plans by the Member States, has identified as well what is called flagships, areas where the Member States have all common challenge, and they have as well investment opportunities with clear creation of employment and growth. This is what is called flagships. Two of them are related of energy, is what is called power up, is to deploy renewables, as I mentioned before, and to integrate the renewables and deploy hydrogen, clean hydrogen. The second flagship is renovate, is all the huge potential to build in renovation and to increase the rate of building renovation. The current is less than 1% and to double by 2030. This is the aim, and this is to put money for increase the renovation, which is important not only because it's going to be more efficient, it's also because we are going to tackle one important problem in Europe, that is energy poverty. So with all the elements taken in mind, I would like as well to highlight that the Commission has already assessed the national energy and climate plans that Member States have submitted last year, and this is a very good starting point for the Member States when they prepare the plans, because they have already identified in these NECPs what are the priority areas, reforms, and investments that could be immediately front-loaded, and they could contribute to achieve the 2030 climate and energy targets. So last but not least, I have to mention that this is an interactive process where the Member State can submit the plans, but the Commission is going to give a first preliminary assessment to ensure that the Member States, when they prepare the plans, are not alone, and the plans at the end of the day fit for the purpose, and as soon as the plans are finalized, the Member State can start receiving the money, because the idea is to recover the economy as soon as possible. I want to finalize my intervention, mention that Spain has already presented, the government presented the plan, 17th of October, and this is a good starting point with concrete projects and reforms in order to provide growth, in order to provide and to create employment. So this is the starting point. Now Spain should submit the draft plan to the European Commission. So what is already done is publicly available, what are the intention of the Spanish government in terms of what could be the priority areas where the recovery and resilience plan would be articulated. So we think it's a very good starting point, and of course we are looking forward the plan that Spain submits, and of course we remain available for any questions, because as I mentioned, it's an interactive process, the preparation of the plan, to ensure that the plans at the end of the day fit for the purpose to facilitate the green transformation of our economies. This is an opportunity, the recovery is an opportunity to make our economies greener and more resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yolanda, for your initial presentation. And next, Birthe Bruhn-Léon, as I said previously, Director of the Iberia Department in the EIB. So, Birthe.
Sí, muchas gracias, Diego. Buenos días a todos y muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and thank you, FEPSA and the Elcano Institute for the organization of this roundtable and the invitation to present our role in the recovery in the long and medium term. As the European Investment Bank, EIB answers to the demand that we have each moment, and the demand itself is a reflection of the financial environment and political realities, both national and European. And therefore, when the pandemic started at the beginning of the year, we made an immediate effort to contribute to a financial recovery in the smoothest and fastest way. This effort consisted, on the one hand, in the speed of our plans for the for financing small and medium-sized companies to make them more flexible, and we wanted to introduce an express recovery process. We also increased the financing possibilities in the health system so they could face the expenses caused by the COVID crisis. In this way, up to now, the investment bank, the European Investment Bank, has approved 30 operations related to COVID in Spain with $5 billion. We have given 3 billion right now. After my presentation, after this information, I want to say that we are deploying the Guarantee Fund to support European companies. This is a solidarity instrument between the member states with around 25 billion euros as a guarantee to leverage the total financing. With these assistance for companies and the sectors that were more or most affected by the pandemic. As my colleagues said before, the short-term measures will not be enough if they are not accompanied by measures that allow for a sustainable growth of the economies in the medium and long term. It is also necessary to have more investment from the public and private side to improve the capitalization of economies and to transform them. That's why we need to act in key and strategic sectors. The carbonization of economies plays an important role in this effort for the modernization of economies. We need to guarantee the internalization of negative impacts associated to intensive process in carbon to have an efficient use and a fairer use of energy. We are prepared to support the transformation of European economies and to guarantee that the recovery is translated into a sustainable growth in time that is respectful with the environment and that allows us to move forward in the social and financial process that we are in. And the European Union, this bank, was created to support this type of processes. That's why we believe that it's more important than ever to have an immediate response to the climate and energy emergency with an acceleration of the process. The bank approved last year a plan to increase financing for the climate of action, moving from the 25% current 50% to 50% until 2025, and to guarantee that financing processes agree with the Paris Agreement and with the do not harm principle. Currently, we are at a process of finishing the profiling of the strategy to have these objectives in mind and to approve the strategy by the end of the year. One of the first decisions that we made and implemented was to divide our financing policy in the energy lending policy that includes the abandonment of the financing of fossil fuels. So the truth is that not all the sectors have the same penetration as the energy sector. The energy system needs to be flexible to guarantee the fulfillment and the compliance with all activities. So this sector is key for the competitiveness of companies and to increase the capacity of adaptation of the different stakeholders. In the last years, we have been witness of a great transformation of the sector, characterized by changes in the regulation, new production models, new consumption models, and also changes in the financing models. And in spite of all the changes, we don't need to say that we have already finished. We need to guarantee the supply. We need to take the environmental impact into account as a whole, and also the financing of all areas that I've already mentioned, and also the national plan of Spanish energy forecasts necessary investment of for 240 billion in the next 10 years. Energy has played a very important role in the financing activity of the GDP, of the bank, sorry. And the truth is that we have invested since 1981 more than 22 billion euros. We've been working, and we are going to continue working in a lot of areas, such as the area of the expansion and modernization, digitalization of the grids, taking into account renewable energy with all types of technology, eolic, biomass, etc. We are very interested in R&D activities of the companies for developing new technology and for the modernization of production processes to make them more sustainable and compatible with the environment. And also other sectors such as energy efficiency of buildings and a very important area which is the clean transport. The railroad, the subways, metros, etc. need to be cleaner. So we are constantly adapting and changing the financing instruments that we have according to the different types and clients that we have, and also according to the demand. I want to highlight, among all the innovations that have already taken place, the Green Energy Loan, which is a tool, a label for renewable projects or energy efficiency related projects. We've also introduced models for financing projects that are risky. And we have also deployed different tools for small and medium-sized companies in green mortgages, for example, and digitalization projects. Our priorities are the same in our case and are aligned with the policies of the Commission and the needs identified in the National Plan of Climate and Energy. Our investment plans have different objectives, such as the encouragement of the projects for investors, and also to have a greater efficiency in the long term. We are not looking for short-term saving plans. And if I use behavioral economics language, the truth is that we are in a certain way developing or deploying tools to have an influence in the promoters' behavior to act and invest now to be beneficial in the future. So in our plans, our investments, we are going to have different exchange rates and different types of loans and different financing tools such as loans and shares in the long term, because we want to be we want to adapt to the financial situation, and in general we appreciate the generalization effect and the quality that we give to our promoters to analyze the projects not only from the financial point of view but also from the environmental and social perspective. If you have any question, I can give more details in the debate. Thank you.
Next, María Mendiluce, CEO of the Women Business Coalition. María, the floor is yours.
Hola, muchas gracias.
Hello, my presentation was in English, but Birthe was speaking Spanish so greatly, but I'll do it in English.
I was with you, I think, last year, participating in the FEDEA Tower. I was really keen to collaborate with the group. I've been collaborating with them for many, many years already. And so a pity that we can't see each other only virtually. But we're very lucky to be able to see each other virtually as well. And thanks a lot for everybody that has prepared this event, which always poses some challenges. So it's also a pleasure to be speaking after such a distinguished group of speakers, especially those that are now going to activate the economies with the green packages. And from the business perspective, these are very much welcome. I work for the Winning Business Coalition. It's a new job. I started, I'm the CEO of this coalition since May. Previously, as mentioned, I was with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So I've been working for the past 12 years with business and pursuing a more sustainable energy and climate. And what we are seeing these days, well, I think there is a widespread beliefs that while the COVID crisis is terrible, the climate crisis can be worse. And as Angela pointed, the inequality crisis even bigger. So it would be, I'm sorry to say, stupid that if when planning to get out of this COVID crisis, we don't take into account the climate change and the social crises that we are facing. And hence, we very much welcome the efforts that the European Union is doing in that respect, and Spain as well. So, from the business perspective, not only we believe, and we work with many companies, the Winning Business Coalition is a coalition of 7 big business organizations, including the World Business Council, but also CDP, Series, BSR, CFG, and a few others. And we work with around 2,000 companies that are committed. We believe that if companies show to policymakers ambitious plans, policymakers will be reassured that when they come with green recovery packages and other policies, that the business is behind, that the business supports more ambitious policies. And in that respect, we have seen what is called the race to zero. And last month, during the Climate Week, we saw many companies with statements that they want to be net zero by 2050. And we're talking about the five of the six biggest companies in the world have committed to net zero, not by 2050, even earlier. Of course, those are IT companies, and maybe it's a bit easier, although one could argue that for Amazon it's not that easy, and Amazon has committed to be net zero by 2040. We are seeing at the same time that the governments are not staying shy, and we saw China coming up with a very important statement, and then very recently, yesterday, Prime Minister from Japan. And this, coming from Japan, is quite remarkable that they have committed to net zero and what that will bring, which is inevitably scaling up the use of renewable energy. So in the energy world, we know what needs to be done, and I don't think I need to explain it, but I'll say the main things. First, we need to electrify as much as possible all the energy uses. So whether it's electric transportation, electrifying heating and cooling, or electrifying some of the industrial processes. Then we, of course, need to make sure that that electricity is clean. And it needs to be net zero by 2050. I would argue that it can be net zero much earlier, given how much the technologies have progressed. The NDGL says that by 2050, solar will be 80% of the energy mix, and 25% by 2030. We have seen that some of these, and we have published a report on the S-curve with micrograph that relates to the exponential nature of these clean technology developments. And we have seen this in renewables. We will see this in electric vehicles with the prices of batteries coming down. And we hope to see this with the prices of electrolyzers for green hydrogen, which is the big thing that we all need to support. And it is the one that will allow us to get to net zero. And of course, this cannot be done without phasing out coal generation, of course, in Europe and all over the world as soon as possible. So as I mentioned before, business is also transitional to this net zero. There are 40 power companies and utilities that have committed to the Science Based Targets Initiative, which is a business standard, standard setter to be aligned with the Paris Agreement and net zero. But we're also seeing, and 5 of which are Spanish, including Iberdrola, Acciona. There are 100 cities that have committed, that have said that they have 70% renewable energy in their cities. These include cities like Auckland, Nairobi, or Seattle. And there are 263 companies that have committed to be 100% renewables. And not only they are committed, they are also asking their supply chains to be committed to 100% renewables. And the bank and investors are following suit, and they are announcing many pledges to reallocate their portfolios towards clean investments. So definitely the business community, it's backing a green recovery. It's backing it because it makes a lot of sense. We have done also an analysis, which you can look in our website, that has analyzed if we move the stimulus package and we make them more green, what would that mean for the world, for Europe, for Spain? And the results are remarkable because in all these scenarios, a green recovery brings more jobs, brings more economic growth, and intensively reduces emissions, which is very much needed. So we can talk more during the debate about the results of those reports, but let me tell you that the 5 measures that we have included are the following. We need to increase energy efficiency, and that is going just the classical energy efficiency. We need to look at circular economy and, of course, building restoration. We need to increase renewable energies, obviously. We need to accelerate the deployment of electric vehicles by replacing through scrappage schemes the internal combustion engine vehicles. We need to invest in the grid. And lastly, even if this is not the space to talk about it, we need to plant more trees. And we need to do that in Spain, and we need to do that in Europe. That generates a lot of jobs, and jobs is what many of the society needs today. This is a fundamental factor when making decisions. We need to make sure that they reduce emissions, they boost economic growth, and they create jobs. Thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to the discussion in the panel.
Thank you, Maria. And finally, we will close the initial presentation with Martin Young. Martin.
Thank you, Diego, and I'm honoured to be on this very distinguished panel. I have a few slides that are going to take you through rather quickly. Firstly, I just wanted to show a slide that Angela has shown us before, and this just reiterates a little bit what Maria was just touching upon, the fact that the pandemic is not an isolated challenge. It's exposing and accelerating other issues that we already know about. There are the economic issues, there are the climate change issues, and the societal unevenness that is really being exposed and that needs to be addressed. On the next slide is also one that Angela has shown as well, but I want to go in a little bit more deeply about what the Council has been doing. As the oldest global community, we've been engaging with our network to try and support energy leaders how to recover better. So what have we been doing? We have been surveying our community to understand the impact and implications, and we've been leveraging our energy foresight capabilities. And from that, we rapidly devised these 4 short-term scenarios that have been differentiated between ambition, collaboration or trust, and control of the virus. Now, we've used these scenarios to build our World Energy Transitions Radar. This app seeks to track signals for the different scenarios. We've tested that with our Future Energy Leaders community, and we launched it publicly at the Clean Energy Ministerial. Now, at our World Energy Leaders Summit, we also piloted our Scenarios Summit. And here we had ministers and energy leaders role-playing different parts for business, investors, government and civil society. And then linking those back to the scenarios, the 4 short-term scenarios. If we move on to the next slide, you'll now see something new. And here we can see some of the results from the World Energy Transitions Radar. Now, this is a snapshot as at the 1st of October, and it's almost got 3,000 signals that it's been tracking. Globally, you can see that there's actually high ambition for more transformative change that's looking beyond reverting back to the pre-pandemic agenda. But there are significant regional differences, and that's based on the different contexts that the regions have. Now, there isn't time to go into this at the moment, but we might well have a little bit of opportunity later. So if I move on to the next slide. Here, this gives a little snapshot from our World Energy Leaders Summit and the scenario playing. The grid on the left-hand side is, shows the axes of ambition, whether this is transformative or reverting to a pre-pandemic agenda, and on the y-axis, the level of trust, whether there's high level of trust and collaboration or a low level of trust and less collaboration, where countries want to focus more themselves rather than reaching out. And in the World Energy Leaders Summit that we had, where they were playing different roles, you can see that they all came looking actually more on the collaborative side of things. But then we have a split between what they were looking at, what their plans directed towards. So those role-playing investors and governments were looking towards the fast-forward scenario, which is the high ambition and high collaboration. In contrast, business and civil society, while they looked at the high collaboration, their level of ambition was lower, and that was reverting more to the pre-pandemic agenda. Now, the value of these sort of simulations is you then compare them with the things like the scenarios radar, so you can see what are people actually tracking. And here the contrast is quite stark. This was a slightly updated radar as of the 8th of October, so the same time as the role-playing. And here we see that the largest, that most signals are for the fast-forward agenda, the one of the high ambition, high collaboration, which contrasts very much with the weighted average that we had from the participants, which is for the pause agenda, which on the global signals that we got were only 15%. It just reinforces the importance of being able to look at the scenarios, because we all want our futures to be better, but sometimes the planning may be for one fixed future, and we need to look at all the different permutations. The policies, the investment strategies need to be able to cope with those different versions of the future. So with that, I end my first slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Martin. And thank you, all of you, for your presentations. Now I would like to introduce some short questions about some of the challenges that we face and that you have mentioned in your initial presentation. First, I would like to start with the business perspective. So first, Maria, my first question is for you. Is about if you are really perceiving changes in business strategies towards sustainability in the current context now. And if that would be the case, if you think that firms consider or those changes are structural, or on the contrary, they will be reversed when the pandemic ends.
In the past weeks, we have seen a lot of companies committing and presenting their plans to be net zero by 2050 or before. In total, there are more than 1,000 companies that have committed to set science-based targets aligned with what the science says that their sector and company needs to do to be aligned with the 1.5 and the Paris Agreement. It's not only they are developing their plans, they're also writing letters to different institutions, whether it's in the US, in Europe, in Spain, Portugal, Poland. In total, 1,200 companies have reached out to policymakers during the COVID pandemic to tell them that they need to build back better, that we need to put in place a green recovery. And this is providing a very clear signal. I would say even more, when the European Commission was debating whether they should present a plan to reduce emissions by 55% by 2030, 170 companies across Europe sent a very clear letter to Ursula von der Leyen saying that the business community wants them to be more ambitious and would encourage that 55% target. So we see that this crisis, rather than shying away companies, it's rather the opposite. I think companies realize that they need to build resilience. They need to set up plans. And I sometimes hear, no, but this is all greenwashing. Okay, well, I mean, if you work with business, you know that when a company presents a plan of this nature, it needs to go through several committees, and including the board of that company that has the overall responsibility. You know? And so these are serious plans. Companies might not have all the solutions, but at least, not at least, but most importantly, they know that this is the direction of travel. And we know that when business put themselves behind an objective and they monitor that and they track it, they often meet those targets and often ahead of time. So that gives a lot of hope. And in my view, this is structural. It's not. It has been influenced by COVID, but it's here to stay because these plans are for the long run.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Martin, you are in an excellent position to observe the diversity in regional approaches to recovery. You have mentioned in the slide, but I would like, if it's possible, to go a little bit deeper in that comparison, and in particular, what is the relative position of the EU, if you could say something about that, because I have seen China versus the EU. It was a little bit strange, China, in that slide for me, with a lot of rewind. But if you could say something about these different regional differences. Sorry, we don't listen to you. We don't hear you.
I'd unmuted and then I was muted. Thank you, Diego. It's the insights tools that the Council has all give a good different regional perspective. So our issues monitor, our world energy trilemma, and now the transitions radar. And the transitions radar is particularly helpful on this. Clearly, different countries and regions have very different contexts of the politics, economics, and their energy endowment, which leads to their different perspectives. And that's clearly illustrated here with the chart that I was able to illustrate. Europe has got very high ambition. And there's the two scenarios that I think Europe shows the most are those ones with a high ambition. But it's got to work harder to close the action gap. And there's an interesting point with the other scenarios that's on the European side is there's a balance in ambition. Balance in collaboration. It's not overly optimistic that it's saying that there's going to be a lot of collaboration. It's that midpoint. Now, if you contrast that with, you highlighted China, the one I would actually really highlight is India, which has a very high degree of ambition, comparable to Europe, but a very low level of collaboration. So it's re-record, and it's much more focused on India doing its own thing, which is the historic way that India might well have been operating. And you can contrast those different perspectives with the Middle East, which has also a very high ambition, but at the same time, its perception seems to be very high on trust. And here, I think the context of the low oil price is really important to reflect. Oil producers in the Middle East are very keen to look at circular carbon for reducing emissions. So that means encouraging things like carbon capture and storage. Now, China has set out very ambitious climate change goals, and I think they have their 5-year plan they're going to be announcing this week. I think they have set out their goal for climate neutrality. I think it's actually by 2060 rather than 2050, but I think by 2050 they are wanting to be a first-tier country on their economy. They've got a broad range of policies. But it's, I think what we've seen in the chart is that there is a high, it maybe not be overly ambitious, maybe it's more realistic, but that might well be the timing. And with China, where you have more state control, they can drive things through, so business gets more directed. I think the interesting bit for us in this region will be how the EU Green Deal gets implemented. It's going to need to have a look at a wider set of options to work, to make sure it works with the grain of what some of the countries are planning. And it was very good to hear Yolanda's point about it's going to be an iterative process. There needs to be this context of affordability, of social justice, and making sure, as Birthe pointed out, that there is a favourable investment environment, because so much investment is required. I hope that gives a quick overview.
Thank you. Very interesting, Martin. Birthe, tengo una pregunta.
I have a question for you that it might be a bit specific, but also a bit tricky. How can you work in the European Investment Bank combining both objectives that have been included in the energy and climate national plans, like for example in the Spanish plan or any other of the different member states plan, take into consideration priorities that are part of the recovery framework, but also the different policies that you mentioned before, energy policy lending of the European Investment Bank. How do you mix all of this together? Is there a moment when there's an incompatibility between all of this, or everything works fine together? Well, thank you, Diego. There's a lot of different elements, it's true. But there's not a dichotomy or contradiction between these different elements. I don't know if you prefer me to speak in Spanish or English, because I feel like an outlier. Everyone's speaking English and I'm speaking Spanish. I don't know what you prefer. Your Spanish is perfect, so if you want to continue in Spanish, that's fine. Well, what you were saying, the national plans, the different European Investment Bank policies, all of these are these pieces of the same jigsaw puzzle. They have to be implemented in the short term. But as Yolanda mentioned at the very beginning, this is all supported on the structural needs of these economies in the long and mid-term requirements of these economies. So the idea is to improve and to consolidate this growth pattern that should be sustainable. So it's not just about getting out of the crisis, whatever it takes, but to do it properly, to make sure that we are setting the standards for quality in the next few years. So the four main pillars of the recovery and resiliency Spanish plan, or at least what we know of the plan for now, has to do with the green transition, the working socially with all the different territories, and the gender coalition. So all of these objectives, the idea of creating quality growth, everything is perfectly aligned with our own policies and the different sectors. So this works because as a public bank, as we are, our objectives, our targets, are focusing on specific projects where we assess not just the financial aspects, profitability of the projects, of course, but also the financial profitability in its whole, how this project will impact the climate, the social pacts, and the other industries. In the last few months, and I would even add in the last few years, we've been already working in Spain intensively in order to identify projects that will foster the climate transition, and we are also trying to work together with the national climate plans in the different member states. specifically in Spain, as we are today talking with the Spanish committee, but we want to add value in terms of facilitating funding for investments that will match the national and European policies. And we also aim to stimulate the development of new technologies, as already has been mentioned, for example, regarding hydrogen or battery production, materials for this battery production, and any other new technology that could come and help with this transition. Thank you, Birthe. And finally, before we open the option to public questions, I would ask a very specific question for Yolanda.
And it's about what is the purpose of the reform of the new energy diplomacy action plan proposed by the German presidency?
Thank you very much, Diego. I can speak in Spanish. It's as well very strange for me to do it in English, but yeah. So basically, I mean, this is something that is still on progress. So what I can say is basically what is the importance of this external policy and the European diplomacy, and this particular in this context. So basically, it's just to use all the instruments at hand to ensure that we speak with one voice in Europe on energy and climate, but we also help to raise the global ambition. So let's say Europe has a very clear target with the decarbonization by 2050, but we need to ensure that we are not alone in this fight against the climate change. So this is exactly what we try with the new energy diplomacy. So basically it's to translate the vision of the law, the energy transition, the energy transformation, the low emissions and clean technologies to the rest of the world. So I think what is important as well to highlight is just to create business opportunities. I mentioned before the EU industrial leadership, and Birthe and colleagues have mentioned in the presentation, I mean, different technologies where Europe has a clear leadership in solar, in offshore, hydrogen, and we need to use this potential to create business opportunity outside Europe, and to export our technology, to export our know-how. And this should be done through this energy diplomacy, what it implies to have a contact with different regions in the world and to express and to engage them in what we are doing and to seek basically opportunities for Europe. And this is an important because at the end of the day, it's going to revert to create job and growth in Europe. One aspect that has been seen during COVID-19 was this value chains and the resilience of value chains. If the components are coming from other parts of the world, let's say China, when the China started with lockdown, we immediately experienced in Europe problems to receive materials that were important components for the clean technology. So this is something that we need to improve, and that's the reason that we need to make our Europe more resilient. This is the idea as well behind. Of course, in this EU diplomacy, we count as well forward-looking risk. So traditionally, we have included what we call energy security, and basically has been how to diversify resources in Europe, diversify suppliers, diversify routes, and basically was linked to the natural gas and coming from different regions, and in particular with a clear focus on Russia, which is the major supplier for Europe. So now we have another aspect of the energy dimension, that is raw materials. We mentioned different technologies like batteries, for example, but we need to think about lithium and other raw materials that they are not in Europe. So the energy diplomacy should also cover other challenges that we are going to have in the production of clean technology. So this should be covered as well in this new diplomacy. And other aspects that they are related as well, and it's forward-looking because it's cybersecurity, very important, very clear, and important because it's linked to the digitalization of the economy and digitalization of the energy sector. So all these elements should be included in the proposal of the European diplomacy. So it's just to give a little bit hint. what is coming next and what are the most important elements that should be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Now I'm going to go to the audience, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, but please, I will ask you a short answer, if it's possible. The first question is for Martin. Martin, do you think the pandemic has opened a parenthesis on the pressure from society to climate change? And will it come back stronger?
Interesting question. I think that the pandemic has really exposed some of the problems that are already existing, for example, on the societal unevenness. Now, whether that has woken up more people to climate change or not, I think in certain areas, for example, I would say that Europe already believes that climate change is an issue and needs to be addressed. Other areas are less persuaded, and you need to see about their context. For example, in Africa, they're going to be focusing on energy access, first of all. But I think there are ways that it can be considered. We can look at trying to recover better, to make sure that where countries that are trying to improve, for example, their energy access, that the lower carbon technologies can be incentivized. So that's where I think there are potential win-wins if people can look at trying to find the right investment frameworks, and very important to actually get the right market design, so that can encourage suitable technologies that look at the different aspects of security, equity, and sustainability.
Okay, thank you, Martin. And a final question for Birthe. Birthe, a question from Curro Laverón. ¿Qué cambios habrá en el...
What changes would you see in the European Investment Bank to be the climate bank included in the Green Deal, and what does it really mean? What does it really mean? Well, as I said before, the bank has decided to have a much more ambitious objective in the area of climate support and environmental support that now was 25% of our activities, and we have the hope to reach 50% of our activities devoted to energy and climate activities. We are in the process of defining a plan that is going to be approved at the end of the year to get deep into different sectors to determine the support areas and initiatives in the bank, and to establish those areas that we cannot support any longer in the future. And this includes fossil fuels, because we are going to follow an emission performance standard for generation plan that cannot exceed 250 grams per kilowatts hour, and we are going to, or we expect to have the same in the transport sector for light vehicles and light fleets, to essentially encourage the use and the electrification of the system and the sustainability of it. Of course, there is a long way to go. In Spain, we have already started in the last years a process of supporting and having a very close dialogue with our leaders and with our clients. Most of them are our clients and have been our clients for so many years, and we have noticed that the truth is that there is a shared and mutual interest in this regard. The public sector and the private sector want to have a dialogue, and this includes companies, banks, etc., where nobody is out of the process. Everyone wants to be want to go into the green direction, into developing more green projects in Spain. In 2015, which was a year impacted by the previous financial crisis or recession, 6% of our activities, just 6% of our activities were related to climate. But last year, 29% of our activities were devoted to climate experiences. So the trend is ascending, and this will continue in the future. Of course, that we are in a constant dialogue with our clients, as I said before, and the best products that we can offer to meet their needs need to have specific characteristics and need to have green elements such as the green loan that I mentioned before, already implemented with Iberdrola and Endesa. In the project finance market, the truth is that PPA's market is developing, but financial or financing processes include the market. In the bank, we need to see how we can take more risks to support the development of the market of a regulated system, the previous one, and move towards a liberalized one, which is the future ahead. The truth is that many financing companies are starting climate screening projects, risk assessments, to integrate their methodologies in their internal policies, but also in their business policies, which is also something that the bank has started. And the truth is that there are more things to do in the future in this regard. Thank you. Birthe. I'm going to close in Spanish. I want to thank you all. I want to thank all the participants in this roundtable for being with us. I think that this roundtable was very interesting, and the truth is that delayed, and we need to close this part. So I want to thank you. Thank you very much.